Every year, I'm back again, Tisha B'Av, and we have a Sefer of Kinos that provides us with a way that we're supposed to express and think about the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash, the different Churbanos that have taken place throughout our history, all of our mourning, all of our lamenting over what's transpired throughout the long history of the Jewish people. It all comes back to this day. But the center point of everything is a Beis Hamikdash, a place that for 2,000 years almost hasn't been around. We certainly don't. We have descriptions of what it's like or what it's all about, but from a practical perspective, we really don't know what it is that we're missing. There's a medrash at the beginning of Parshas Truma, where Hashem says, "Bigfuli Truma," that He wants us to collect in order to establish the initial mikdash, the Mishkan. And the medrash in it has Hakadosh Baruch Hu expressing to the Jewish people that I'm not any more interested in being bachutz. I don't want to be outside anymore, but I want to be in a bias. I want to be in a home. Chutz versus bias. Being outside versus being inside. The bias, when we talk about what a house is or what a home is, it's not a structure. It's not merely a structure. It's a place that helps define a relationship. A relationship could be something that is, in a sense, kind of temporary, kind of fleeting, not really anchored anywhere. Two people that enjoy each other's company, get together here and there, hang out if they bump into each other. But when you have a bias, when we think about what it means, bias, nema b'Yisrael, all of those expressions that we have of bias, we're talking about something that goes well beyond any kind of physical structure, but it defines a relationship. It takes two people and turns them into one. It is a place in which an entire family becomes anchored and defined as a singular unit. When someone has a home, they could be traveling far, far away for many, many days, weeks, months, but there's always home. They always have a place that they belong. The loss of a bias, when we talk about a lost Beis Hamikdash, we're talking about a place where the union between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael was anchored. That union, that place, but more importantly, that union is now where? Where is it? The sense of belonging that a person feels when they have a home, that sense of being anchored, that sense of having, like, I belong somewhere. That's something that a person loses when they lose their bikes. I saw a few days ago There was an interview with Arbel Yehud, one of the hostages who was returned back a few months ago. And she said the following words: "Nothing in me has truly returned home. Her sense of everything, her sense of safety, her sense of home, her sense of family, her sense of connection, all of those things in the 500 plus days that she was in captivity, all of those things were shattered. So she's back, but she's not home." That sense of absolute belonging, that sense of just always knowing that there's a place where Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu come together, get together, belong, whether or not a person is in Yerushalayim or whether a person is in South America. That's the place of belonging. That's the place where we are. That is something that we no longer have anymore. That relationship is no longer the thing that easily defines us. It's our challenge. The psukim in Shir Hashirim that the Medrash references. Ani yeshena v'li bi'er, so a description of somebody who's sleeping, but their heart's awake. And kol dodi dofe, the voice of my beloved is knocking on the door. Pischili, open it for me. Achosi, rayasi, yonasi, samasi. My sister, my beloved, please open the door for me. Sharoshi nimna tot butzosai, mitzisi laila, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's reaching out to the Jewish people. He's come, and he says, I want to join you in the bites. And what happens? The response back. Pashatati es kutonti, echacha el bashana. Rechatzti es ragli, echacha tanfe. I've taken off my ksonas. It's like you're knocking on the door. It's like raining outside. I get it, but like, come on. I'm like in my pajamas every day. I can't come to the door. I washed my feet. I like echacha. Note the term of echa being used. Echacha tanfe. How can I get them dirty again? Dodi shalach yadu min achara me'ai hamu alav. So, person in Klal Yisrael is lying in bed and just saying that, like, "Oh, come on, this is too rough. You know what, Shem, we'll open the door in the morning." Okay, it's like, not now. But then all of a sudden, there's this surge of longing of like, what am I doing? Kicking Hashem away? Kamtani leftoach ledodi. I got up to open for my dodi, and what happens? The dodi chamak ava, but he's gone. For 2,000 years, Klal Yisrael sent the Kodesh Baruch Hu away. Hashem was interested in having a bias with us. Hashem wanted to have that relationship with us. And yeah, there are times where we find HaKadosh Baruch Hu out in the field and we have different engagements with him where we're able to feel and see the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with us and with the Jewish people. But it has a temporary sense to it. It's not something that is so kavua. It doesn't have a bias. It doesn't have that sense of this is a permanent place where we all belong. And that's how we struggle. Because we, as Opei Hashem, as people who serve Hashem, we have this sense that, like, hey, we could connect our Kodesh Baruch Hu. I could have, like, once in a while, like a real amazing davening where I can learn learn really well and feel something. Or I can have a Yom Tiv where I feel inspired, a Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, something that lights me up and I feel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Something happens in my life where I recognize, oh wow, that was the Yad Hashem. but it's fleeting. It comes, it goes, and that anchoring, that bias, that's what we're missing. The sense that that's where we are, and that's what we are, and that's who we are permanently. That's what's missing. The word echa, Chazal connected to one of the first things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to mankind. After Adam and Chava eat from the Eitz Hadas, he says to them, Ayeka, where are you? Where are you? Same word. Aleph, Yod, Chaf, Hey. Echa. How could this happen? Ayeka. Because where are you? Are you living with me? Are we a unit? Is that who we are? Is that what Klal Yisrael is? Is that what Adam and Chava were in Gan Eden? Or are you living kind of independently and like reaching out to me when you need me? But that's not what defines you. Where are we? That's the question that Klal Yisrael has been asking itself for nearly 2,000 years. Where are we? And instead of allowing that question to consume us, instead of allowing that question to define everything that we do, that we are just on this mad search for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, feverishly seeking him out anywhere and everywhere. We kind of like have that surge of like, where's Hashem? And then it's, yeah, all right, move on. But that's the lack of bias that we suffer from. As we go through a Tisha B'Av and we think about the Korbanos, and unfortunately, it's not too unfamiliar to us when we hear and we read about death and destruction, Holocaust. Those things, they ring a little, unfortunately, too familiar because it happens too often, too recently. But when we think about a Beis Hamikdash, it's not just that there's this magic house that makes everything else go away. It's that there's a bias. It's that there's a place where we feel and we are attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we shed our independent, independent of Hashem way of being, and we give ourselves over to that relationship in a permanent way. That's what we're really missing. That's what we really need. And that's what we're really longing for. So we're going to go through the Kinos till around Hatzos. And as we go through each one, Kinos are written many, many, many years ago and all expressing different things. They are written in a way that just reading it straight up, it's very, very hard to really get a sense. It's written from a sense of crying. When a person is crying, when a person is lamenting, when they are throwing, there's almost like this free association of just everything that's paining you, everything that's bothering you that comes out. And therefore, it doesn't read. Most of them do not read like some sort of narrative of something that went on. It's just like these surges of emotion about this, about that, about the other thing. So they're a little bit hard to understand. But we'll try to pick out something from each one to try to bring ourselves closer to an understanding of what exactly we're missing and what exactly it is that we should be longing for. Because ultimately, what we have to do and what it is that could Be'ezer Hashem turn this whole thing around is when we long and when we long for and when we want all of the right things, when we have our sense of priority, our sense of what we are, who we are, where we belong, when that is all straightened out, that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, I'm going to come knock on your door this time. This time, Klal Yisrael is going to open it. Okay, the first kina that we say, kina Vav, kina 6, is on page 152 in the art scroll. There is a line over here on page 154. Pachad chet Shiloh tochaf sodeha. The dread of the sins of Shiloh was swiftly fulfilled. So it's interesting because the Shiloh, to say that there was an actual churban. Shiloh was one of the stages of as the Mishkan was coming into Eretz Yisrael. So one of the locations for a long time was in Shiloh, and that there was an actual churban. Hard to say that there was a real physical churban that took place over there, but there's a Rashi in Shir Shirim that tells us that there was a Chet Shiloh, and it's referring to the Bnei Eli, the sons of Eli, who were in charge, who were the Kohanim Gedolim over there, the heads of it, and that they were not fully committed to doing the avoda fully l'shem shemayim. So, in a sense, while the end of Shiloh was not a korban per se, the same way, in the same uh, quote unquote spectacular way that the Beit Mikdash were destroyed, burnt, and dug under, etc. But what happened is starting from then, there was a lack of full appreciation for the Kedushas HaMikdash. And if there's a way that we have to be Oved Hashem, and it has a Kedusha to it, and we don't fully appreciate what that is a foundational problem. That we have something, we have the ability to serve Hashem in it, and not, and just like being casual about it, not taking it as seriously as we need to take it, not giving it the full the full appreciation of what it is. That's what we were talking about before. It's like this lack of appreciation for the fact that we have some kind of way of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's a crack in the foundation. So while the hate may not be exactly like sinas chinam and hatred of others and the gimel averos chamuras that the people serving avodah zarah like we had by the other batei mikdash, when there's a crack in the foundation of something, that's that even the smallest crack can wreak havoc and destruction. Who we are and what we're all about is about the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when that's not something that we fully appreciate, that we say, okay, listen, whatever amount of kedusha, whatever amount of, 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 of respect, covered, we can give those things and those places in which we can interact with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we don't even do that, so then clearly we're lacking in appreciation for who we are and what we're all about. Shavasru many shimunu yabrai, Tzichu ma'odoi, Tziburi bedrei chavek Mishkan b'tzoi tzibi rai, Tzakoi tzibuk tzibuk rai, Sof kuf kafu mo'odoi berai, Kit tzidok halab, Naflo denu b'tzil duchu yoi, Nefador bedrai, Einem oled, Also b'tzibuk tzibuk Nipros nupsu hasidev halgei zafra 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 Hakat pitchido zafra zafra patsu hasidev hasidev patsu Elini deha Erisat yontia halkat Any midnight tapu alvarche Yontia tapu tapu midnight Soida sarta midnight Sadik watu noi Ato kaldi nisparet Karab to Lafayette, Karab to the Point Oikin, Khalil Ashmir Baba Picture, Bumi Abori Hotel Hermi, Number Happy Next Kina number 7 on page 158. The 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 flow of the Kina goes like this. How could it be? And then it describes something terrible. And how HaKadosh Baruch Hu do you not remember the bris bein habasarim that Hashem made with Avraham Avinu, or the way you took us through the Midbar, or the way you gave us the Torah at Har Sinai? It's it's an interesting thing because it's not saying, Hashem, how could you do this to us? Don't you remember what we did for you? Normally, that would be like kind of like the way people would discuss something in a relationship. They'd say like, hey, like I'm giving all of this into the relationship. Why are you not reflecting that back? This is different. This is saying, Hashem, why are you doing all of these negative things? Don't you remember all the great things you did for us? And what is that? What are we saying through that? So when there is a relationship, so there are some relationships that we have that are kind of like a quid pro quo type of thing, where um, I do something for you with an expectation that you do something back for me. But when people have a relationship that's real, it's not about making it even that, like, it's a 50-50. I'm only going to give you if you give me. There is a relationship where there is a heart, and there is a love, and there is a dedication. And we're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're saying, listen, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like, you're our parent. You're supposed to be a father. You're supposed to be a mother to us. You did all of these things for us that you didn't owe us anything for. So clearly, like, our relationship is that of a parent to a child, or a spouse, husband to a wife. But what's going on right now? If that's the relationship, so then why are all these horrible things happening to us? And what it's reflecting is our sense and our horror at the idea that a relationship that was once, not again, it's not the type of relationship where, like, hey, you don't give me, I don't give you, but it was a relationship where it wasn't about putting stuff in the bank and who owes who. It was about love and commitment, and absolute commitment, just like a parent to a child. There are stories. I heard a story of someone who was in the Kovna ghetto, and they were on a death march, and there were there was a father who was with his children, with his sons. His sons were late teenagers, early 20s, relatively strong, young, and the father was very, very weak at that point. And they were basically carrying their father. And yeah, the father was like trying to move his legs and slip around. And at one point, the father said he couldn't go any further. The father turned to his children and he said, I'm not your father. You need to go on without me. I hereby am not your father anymore. The pain of a father needing to say something like that to a child, of needing to say, I, I- this is it. I'm not playing that role anymore. There's a pain, there's a break, there's a tear that takes place as a result of that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has told us, B'ni B'chori Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, you're my son. Haben Yakir li Ephraim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers we remember all of the wonderful going out of Mitzrayim, how we were just HaKadosh Baruch Hu's child. And what we're asking in this kina is how could that all get uprooted? How could that get torn apart? We express that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we still love you, we still want you, and we're like we're grasping in the dark as to how this could be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu just seems to have cast us asunder, even though we were his child. But I think that story of that person on the death march tells us a little bit something about what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing. How sometimes the need to say, I'm not your parent, is not something that is done out of hatred. It's not something that's done out of casting them aside. But it's maybe the hardest act of love that one can do. The Blushev Rebbe, Rabbi Yisrael Spira, got his hands on papers for himself and for his wife and child. By the time he got the papers and he was able to use them, his wife and child had already been taken and killed. So there was an opportunity. And people heard that. So there was he had a female relative that was going to pose as his wife, but there was room for a child. And when word got out, all of a sudden he had 50 people with their children lined up at his door. Take my child, take my child. He said, I can't do this. He went to the head of whoever was in charge, the Judenrat, and he said, listen, you figure out who the child is going to be. I can't make a choice over here. A day later, however they figured it out with the lottery, however it was, a day later, a father shows up with a 6-year-old child. And he looks at his child and he says to him, he says, from this day forward, I am not your father. This man over here is your father. He gave his child a kiss. He slowly walked out and left. The Blushev Rabbi said that kiss, that act of saying, you're not my child anymore. This man is now your father. That was something that stayed with him throughout his entire life. Just remembering all of the love that was contained in the kiss that was given as a father was saying, you're not my child anymore. This is your father. The sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has cast us aside and that we ask, how could it be? Echa, how could it be that we go through all of these struggles? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't you remember you were like a parent to us, how you did this and you did that? And it wasn't about any quid pro quo. It wasn't about what we would give you. It was just about love. Maybe the message for us is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to say at a certain point, listen, the only way that I'm going to get you to really act as part of my family, as someone with who's unified, needs to have to do that very, very hard move of saying, I'm not your parent anymore. Not because I hate you, but because I love you. And it's with that sense that we can think about all of the trials and tribulations that Klal Yisrael has undergone and realize that they're coming from a place of love. Kinos, number 8 on page 163. So we have an expression of our not even knowing what to say. We don't even know how to say it. You know, when you have when you have something, you get into a thing with another person. Yeah, you have a disagreement with them, you have an argument with them. They have a taina on you. They have some sort of claim against you. So if you're smart, or if you know somebody else is smart, you could kind of figure out, okay, this is the person. This is kind of like their psychology. These are their hangups. This is like what they're all about. And therefore, like I can sort of figure out like how to approach them. And I don't want to use the word manipulate, but manipulate them in order to get them to understand and to recreate that connection again. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't work like that. If if somebody wrongs us and they come and apologize, we want them to apologize with an understanding of what they did wrong. When somebody just comes and apologizes without realizing what they did wrong, yeah, it's empty. It's like, they're just saying the words "I'm sorry," they're mouthing things, but without a true appreciation of what happened, the apology rings hollow and it doesn't work. We come to HaKadosh Baruch and we're lamenting and we're saying, we're what? We're sorry? Sorry for what? Like, what are we missing? What have we missed? What did we do wrong? Are we really going to correct it? All of these are things that in a sense, we're missing it. We don't even know what to say. We don't even know like how to express, how to put our finger on what's missing. Like Rahmana Litzlan, a kid who is a yatsam, a child who lost parents before they were even born, before before they were 1 or 2 years old. So in a certain way, it's like, well, they never knew them to miss them. On the other hand, they know that something very deep and very natural is missing from them. But can they put their finger on it? No, because they never had it before. And that's sort of where we're at. And this kina is lamenting the fact that we know that something is missing. We know that something is wrong. But what it is, and to be able to put our finger on it, is something that's already so beyond us. And therefore, we hope that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, listening to us lament the fact that we don't even know what to lament, is enough for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to recognize that we really, really, truly want to be back with Him. Afin b'chei le'il titbarek on the next kina test. Echa tefarti mirashai hishlichu on page 166, number 9. So we have again a lament about the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, and in the second paragraph starts with the Beis Bila Shoftai B'moad says, if some, that he swallowed up my judges because of their perverted advice. The Kina actually goes through all forms of like the tochacha, and it's a relatively it's a longer Kina, going through all the different parts of the tochacha that we have. Parshas Bechukosai, Parshas Kisavo, where Hakadosh Baruch Hu tells us all the terrible things that are going to befall us, and we basically say, "Yeah, that happened," and it is, and we think about what it is that caused it. And one of the things that's pointed out over here is how the judges of Klal Yisrael went and they Mida connected Mida, like that they went and they perverted justice. So what gives us the right to go and then ask for justice from Hakadosh Baruch Hu? When we think about what it means to pervert the justice of the din of the Torah of Hashem, so we often think about it in one way, where we think about like there's a judge and he's on the take, and so basically whoever wants to win, so whoever pays the judge the most, so he's the guy who's going to be able to win, and that is definitely a form of corruption that is obvious and blatant, and a horrible thing. There's another form of a perversion of justice. Let's say you have a judge who, you have a court case and somebody comes in and he's a very well-to-do person, and he's coming to court against somebody who's well, let's say a tenant of his who's very poor, and he doesn't have any means, and he feels like he's getting taken advantage of, and some guy who's like really down on his luck, and automatically a person's heart goes out to the weaker person. And you see that, like, here's this person, like, he's got gazillions of dollars. none of this really matters to him. And he's coming after this guy, this Nebuch. He doesn't have a job and he doesn't have resources, and he's coming after him. And so a person says that, so the judge kind of like, he wants to help out the weaker person. That's also not mishpat. That's also not the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants judges to be. There are boundaries, boundaries of justice, boundaries of truth, and they keep everything in place. Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? One of the descriptions in the um, of bracha that we have in the Torah is that we get our geshem, we get rain in the right time. What's a klala? Is if you get rain in the wrong time. So what do you mean? It's rain. Isn't that bracha? Well, not at the wrong time. Not if all the crops are in the middle of being gathered. Not if it comes down in a monsoon type of way. Not if it creates flash floods. No, rain is not always a bracha. The idea that there is a tzedek, that there's a mishpah, that there is a way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, run my world like this. This is what truth and justice are. That means that we have to live by that, regardless of how our hearts may feel or how our emotions may get tugged in a certain direction. The ends don't justify the means. The Torah is always the ultimate and only guide for Klal Yisrael. And it's that sense when we think about like what it could be that there were corruption of judges. It doesn't just have to mean that there were these people who were on the who were on the grift and like on the take. And it means that Torah stopped being the guidepost of everything that was going on with Klal Yisrael, and recognizing that that's the way it's supposed to be is an extremely important way for us to show our being given over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. איך התפארתי מראש עשי השליחו. בחלום פני אשר חייתי נמלכו פניו מבחותי. עמוד ועלי כולכם חוץ ועלי כולכם יהיה בילה שופט במוי עצות מופות נסתיר מהם כשר אבו סופם יאמר לבוק משרם בהפסם מאוד סמד תילה באפו אני ניחומות מהירלש ישער God ever Cardom use love The next Kina Yud, it goes through the Kina goes through the different Mishmoros HaKahuna. These are the groups of Kohanim that served throughout the year from different families in the Beis Hamikdash. As opposed to calling them by their names, it actually has almost like a sarcastic name is given to each one, indicating mistakes that they each made, and there is again a sense that Klal Yisrael, as much as you know, the last keynote we talked about how the judges went wrong, and over here it's talking about how the Mishmaros HaKahuna, how the Kohanim who were serving in the Beis Hamikdash went wrong. There is a klal, there's a rule that we have when it comes to Klal Yisrael and mistakes that were made and problems, issues that they have, and that is that the leadership is a reflection of the people, and the people are a reflection of the leadership. That there's no big gap between the leadership and the people, as much as there may be. They may be bigger tzaddikim and more powerful, and they have all different things. But being that Klal Yisrael is so super connected spiritually, when there is a problem that seems to be reflected in the leadership, it really comes down to the fact that they're leading the people. And if the people have something wrong with them, that is going to trickle up, so to say, into the leadership as well. So when we talk about mistakes that leadership makes, it's really a reflection of the mistakes or the issues that Klal Yisrael had within themselves. Over here we have a line, Persa ve'inyan sholea. We reached out to Hashem through prayer, and Hashem did not send a hand back. It's on page 178 towards the bottom of the page. That we reached out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we did not get anything in return. But there's something that's going on over here. And when it comes to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, there was a reality that Klal Yisrael did not want to think about. We had Nevi'im, we had prophets who told us that we were doing wrong, what we were doing wrong, that destruction was coming, and we ignored it. We didn't just ignore it. We, when one of them was written down, it was ripped up by our king. Our king ripped up the message from the Navi. We had a Navi Zechariah who was murdered. We have a keynote about him coming up later. Was murdered in the Beis Hamikdash. A horrible, horrible act that took place on Yom Kippur. I mean, it was just this horrible thing, because Hashem was listening to us, and Hashem was communicating with us. but it was like, we wanted the communication one way and one way only. How about we ask for stuff, you give it to us, and when you want to tell us things, we're just going to ignore that, or just don't tell us anything hard, or don't tell us anything about ourselves. When we reach out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Yad Sholech, and there's no hand coming back, it's not because Hashem has, Chas v'shalom, turned his back on us. It's that we created this dynamic. We created a dynamic of we are not interested in what Hashem has to say to us. And all of a sudden, we're reaching out to Hashem, and we expect HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reach back to us. This is the reality that was created by us ourselves. It's the recognition that our relationship with Hashem is a two-way street, and that if we want Hakadosh Baruch Hu to listen to us, we need to be listening to Him, and no, not because of a quid pro quo, not because like Hashem needs us, but the definition of a healthy relationship, the definition of a relationship where there's love and respect between parties, where there's a bias, where there's that sense of we are a unit, is one in which there can be this openness on both sides, where I can tell you and you can tell me. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very happy, wants us to be asking for our things. He wants us to be reaching out to him with what we want. But when Hashem sends us messages, how do we react to that? What do we do when that message comes our way and we get a sense that, like, okay, maybe this needs to be improved upon, maybe this needs to be done, maybe this needs to be stopped, maybe this is the direction that Klal Yisrael is supposed to take. We used to have that come to us straight up, straightforward with words. This is what it is, and it's easy for us to say, well, if we would have enough, we would listen. I don't think it's that simple, and for us to be tuned into the idea that Hakadosh Baruch Hu, we want to communicate to Him, but if we're going to reach out our hand, when Hashem reaches out His hand, if we just ignore it or slap it away, how could we expect Hakadosh Baruch Hu, when we reach out our hand, to go and grab it? Also, may our Sakala Mukushata about Shata, Umayajev Shata Mimishmer Mishra Mishata. Darke Hif Hashabamukin Ifrat Kaslu, Ham Il Kinikra Petilo, Kubrat, Valmitilo, Phenomena, Mishra, Sayin, Ice, you, Oizim, Malitim, Below, Mela, Bit, Halo, Corpus, the Right Slacken, Mahu, Remind me, Milaka, Mela, me base. Hadar, I'm back at the next month, very feral or trusty path. When I wrote Nesbu, when I wrote Nesbot, you part of the left of the path, not the Dutch path. Zuckworth, Manager, Nasa, Pishma, Hikibu, Yata, Anot, Amin, like Abu, Another road, Super up, the hook, up, Sane, Isle, Hate, Patafa, Umbrella, El, Viltica, Visit, the Fight, El, Upward, Market, El, Table Penalo, Rabba, Toyfel, Onona, Backmark, Club, Cowbell, the 18th Carbell, the Kayane Arbell, the Karat, Server, Vegetable, Italia, for Gap, it's for Hammer, it's a hatred, the people, the people, the Pebble, Colombo, Tony, Pinocchio, the Cano, the Goina, both except now, another topic, enough, if it's rest, Loyla Morim, I ain't the pass, the Capital, Heresy pass, the Futu Mutar, or pass, and Eras, the pass, Mimar and his man, in his kind of belief, or the own Pakada, I have owned no ticket point, but I'll be my own, which marriage makes the head of this kind of oil, appointment of chapter, and simply up in nasty, military, minimum, governor, like another marriage. She'll be right, Murray, Horoya, the Linus Cardiac, and Maria, we wrote married to Maria, who wrote her Algabe Sartu Sartu Heritage of Mahanis to Alaya Heritage Eight Semites Sanis Toughness Yata Yafan Erisop and Yatalayak like had Nina Bahash Cambridge Atlayak Bus Alas Bin and then Bubble Not Very That's what like Marat Lorad Bahu Arat The next Kino Yud Aleph, number 11, on page 182. It is a kina that Yirmiyahu wrote for Yoshio Hamelech. Yoshiyahu was a king of Klal Yisrael who led the biggest tshuva movement in the history of Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael had been at that point mired in very, very deep involvement in Avodah Zarah. He discovered a part of the Torah and read it, became inspired, and he managed to inspire the entirety of Klal Yisrael. And Chazal tell us about him that the power that he had and the change that took over Klal Yisrael he was a very, very, very like potential Mashiach that Klal Yisrael was really heading towards its perfection at that time. And it sounds a little bit over the top, but he even had set up a way of getting rid of Avodah Zarah, where they had inspectors that would go to people's homes and make sure that all of their Avodah Zarahs were gotten rid of, and that it was a true wipeout of Avodah Zarah at the time. The kidda points out. So what ends up happening is that he feels like this has really hit a time of like where Klal Yisrael is, at its best. Um, the Egyptians want to come and pass through the Eretz Yisrael in order to fight a war with somebody else. And Yoshiyahu feels that this is a time of where Klal Yisrael is at its peak, and therefore the pasuk of the Cherev Losavar Ba'artzachem, that a sword should not pass through your land. This is for right now, and he refuses passage for them, and that doesn't go well. And he ends up in a war with them, and he himself ends up getting, it says in the description of 300 arrows shot into him. And as he was dying, Yirmiyahu comes by him and sees him dying on the battlefield. And he says, Tzadikihu Hashem Pipiu Morisi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the tzaddik. I went against his word. And with those words, that's his utterance. Those words are in Megillat Echa. Um, one of and so what happened? Like where was he wrong? So in the Kinna, it's actually indicated where it says on the first page on page 182, it says Davak Bochet Leitzani Hadar Asher Kamo Achar Hadeles Lizdar. And what this describes is that people still had an Avodah Zarah, that so if you have a double door and then you open it, so the Avodah Zarah was made up of two halves that were on the back of a double door. So the inspectors would come in, they'd open the doors. No Avodah Zarah to be found. When the inspectors left and the doors were closed, so then that's that internal that there was the image of the Avodah Zarah that still remained in some households. And as much as it sounds like, okay, so that's like a cute way of like having an avodah zarah that an inspector won't find, but it is indicative of a sense of how on the real inner side of a person, on as much as the people had rooted out avodah zarah in so many ways, there was still this inner lurking sense of some commitment to avodah zarah that still existed, and therefore it was not fully uprooted from Klal Yisrael. And that sense of, the recognition that, Yoshio had at the end of Tzaddiku Hashem, that Hashem, I should have listened when the Navi had told him that, maybe you should let these Egyptians pass through. He didn't listen. He thought that everything was right. He recognized that he too was not fully authentic in his absolute commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At the end of the Kina here, we have a description of that after he was killed, there was a 22-year um, suspension of the destruction of the Mikdash. Tala be'esrim u'shtayim meharosh shatzos, that there was a 22-year. Why? Hisaftu lo echa be'esrim u'shtayim osios, because they had a eulogy that used the 22 letters of the Aleph base. So because they had 22 forms of expression of lamenting Yoshiyahu, so therefore the Churban was pushed off for 22 years. What does this really mean? if if a person is connected to something, if they have the ability to really uh, value it and be connected to it, then we look at that as being they're a part of it. They're connected to it. And therefore, you had this tzaddik Yoshiyahu, this person who was someone who himself was so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The idea that the people were able to be masbid him, to lament him, to appreciate who he was, it showed that appreciation shows that they are connected to it in a way that allows them to still tap in to his zchus, to his merit. The idea that we may not be as perfect as people that we can, and we may not have had the opportunity to develop ourselves as Talmidei Chachamim, as scholars. We may not have had the opportunity to develop our fear of Hashem and our awe of Hashem to the you know to the best that it could have been, whether it be our fault, whether it just be a lack of opportunity. But there's something more that a person can do. Is that if a person can connect themselves to something that's above them and realize that, like, listen, I'm not where it's at, but that's something that I appreciate. That person is a person who I appreciate, and I recognize that this is the type of person that Hakadosh Baruch Hu really respects and really wants in his world. I hope that one day I'll be able to work on myself and get myself close to that. When we're able to develop that kind of connection, that type of appreciation, whether it be to someone from the past, whether it be to someone in the present, that gives us that it makes us like a connection and an extension of that person. Rabbi Stroll Spira told the story of that he was when he was in the Janowska camp. So one day, everybody gets called out in the middle of the night, and they're told to go out um, to some area right outside the camp. And as he's coming there, he sees these two large pits that are dug, and everybody is told that you have to jump over the pit if you want to live. If you don't make it, you're dead. And with the help of the German machine, so people are jumping, and the pits are filling up with people because it was a long jump in the first place. And for people who had already been starving and diseased and their feet aching, not given any sort of shelter or nutrition, it was something that was very difficult to do in a regular time, and certainly for these people. So Rabbi Saul Spira was 53 years old at the time, and there was a person who was right behind him, a person who at the time was not from, was not, was but he had developed a friendship with Rabbi Spira through, um, on through their being together in the barracks and in the work that they did, and it was coming their turn to jump, and Rabbi Spira describes how he closed his eyes and he jumped, and suddenly he felt himself on the other side of the pit with this guy right behind him. So Rabbi Spira, turned to him, and the guy turned to Rabbi Spira, and the guy says to Rabbi Spira, How did you how'd you do that? How'd you, like, you're an older person, like, how'd you jump across the pit?" So Rabbi Spira said, "I closed my eyes and I held on to the coattails of my ancestors." And Rabbi Spira says to him, "How how did you get across the pit?" He said, "I have no idea. I was holding on to your coattail." But the idea that someone could be holding on to someone else or something else, and that becomes a part of who they are, and that becomes a part of a person's identity. That's something that, is a way that we have the ability to tap into a greatness that's beyond ourselves. It allows us to connect to a greatness that is greater than ourselves. And Klal Yisrael, after Yoshiyahu dies, they have an appreciation for who he was and for what he did for them. And their ability to hold on to him was able to hold off the Churban for 22 years. 22 years after the time that they were already deserving, in a sense, of the Churban. The Churban was pushed off 22 years because they were able to latch on to that appreciation for who he was. That made them a part of him, and that held off Churban. And it's a lesson that we can take for ourselves as far as what we connect to and what we appreciate and what we develop a sense of belonging to. It's developing a little bit of that sense of the bias, of that connection, that we're all part of one family. And when we look up, and we grab onto those that are greater than us, that went before us, that had that strength, that allows us to tap into it and to tap into its merit as well. Down become my case, feel like you're coming with the come Sabat mo kay Tiktani, hat director couple after I have Muslim territory my head up they got the that's what I'm up to them, that's how they beat that podcast Even though I'm the Kubi shall come out of Sala, Yday, I'm covered up in the Mala, Ila Hamoy Night, right, man, Catholic, Ever, Fairfield, Brian, man, back of right, day, but it's right. May had the Tibet to the Kazan and no, man, I'm able to put after the hit, but after to do Anthony, the man who must take up the Karab, I then I enough to get your participate not just how the Karab to I mean to never matter rock but if the BP that's right DC no if you can the Kelly the time as the like some bit McGrath I play the I get the color time I have right just up to the I all the attack like God that the next Kinna Yud Bays, number 12, on page 188. We have a recurring theme where we're talking about Ahli, we're talking about my tent again, is referring to the Beis Hamikdash, and everything, all of the stanzas end with where's the po? Where's the po? Hey, hey, where's the here? So the first line is Ale Eshet Afta Ad Lo Vereshis, the mikdash that was desired by Hakadosh Baruch Hu before even Bereshis, like before even the beginning of time. This is something that Hakadosh Baruch Hu wanted, Hakadosh Baruch Hu designed, that there be a place that's this mikdash, that this place of this bias, this place of connection with Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and it's a constant it's constantly referring to it as the place that's ho, the place that's here. So it's interesting when we think about places. Places are like something that are objective. That you have, you have North America, you have South America, you have Asia, you have Australia. Like you have places that are places, and like any GPS works, that there's like a set fixed place, and everything is kind of based off of that because makom place is an objective reality. When you describe something as here or there, it has nothing to do with an actual physical place. You can't put a here or a there on a map. It's that, the "you are here" sign, if there's no dot that tells you where you are, then you're nowhere. You're always where you are. So here is always here, and there is always there, but it's completely subject. It depends on the person. The place of the mikdash is not about a place. It's not about like, we there's session, but like, the people who feel the need, like on Pesach, to go and bring a carbon Pesach on the Makom Hamikdash, right? On the, Rahman al on the Harabayas, right? That's the wrong thing to do. That's not. Yes, it is technically the coordinates of it are the place where Hashem said that a carbon should be brought, but the Beis Hamikdash is not defined as coordinates on a map. It's not a latitude and a longitude. It is a po. It's a place that is here, where Hashem says, "I am here," and wherever Hashem says He is, that's where He is. And if at a certain point He's not there, so then He wants us to be doing something else. But the sense of it is, again, a bias is not just a structure. It's not just a place that has a roof and wall. A bias is a place where you can have and be in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be connected. When a person says, "Where is my father?" A house, when you have people who after the war went back to their houses, they did not go home. They went back to a structure that was now occupied by enemies, by people who hated them, by people who killed their families. That's it was not home. The home was ripped out of it. The sense of bias was ripped out of it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, as much as we have a Beis Hamikdash that we long for, what we really long for is to have hope, is to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu be here, to be here with us. Unfortunately, sometimes we have a sensation of it, sometimes we do not. Kadosh Baruch Hu is, of course, always with us. But having that real sense of where a person can say, "Where is my father? My father is right here with me." That's the sense of having a bias. That's the sense of having a mikdash. That's what this ohel, that's what this tent, that's what the Beis Hamikdash, that's what we're longing for. And therefore, the expression of it is not an expression of, where's the house? It's where's the po? Where is the here? Where is the here that our Father is? Where's the here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is? That's the thing that we're missing. That's the thing that we're longing for. Aliyah Sheta Avta. Aliyah Sheta Avta. Alıyor şekibatim olmafanı çıktı kayıp tutukoy. Samalanata. You abiyat gibi Alıyor şerkan hadisami az. Bitap mi payı mi payla manana taktın hafiyatı bir niyete çıkıp niyete bakay. Alıyor şerkan tezakta fasına kata bakay. Samalanata taktı hafiyatı mim. Miniyete kiker paras binapta kitana tabakay. Alıyor şerkan bitti saçma saçma nişkoy samalanata taktı hafiyat. Kumas niyete karas bakay. Boyd me for a academy for me for the photographer and a ticket for the boy. I'm a because I'm just a life happy. So just yes, I think. Next, Kenny, we say Kenny Yud Gimel on page 192, number 13. So the second stanza, Ako Gosh. So the whole theme of it is a ko. Where is the ko? Different times, Hakadosh Baruch Hu used the word ko. It's a play on the word echa, aleph yud, and then chaf hey. So it's saying that like echa is like where are these things that took place once upon a time in our connection with Hashem, and the 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 word ko is used very prominently when it comes to the Akedah. The Panovich Rav, who lost so much. He lost his family, he lost his community in the war. He used to ask the following question. He says, when we talk about nisyonos, when we talk about the different tests, the trials, tribulations, Avraham Avinu, Stam in general, when we talk about tribulation, it always comes back to the Akedah. And, frankly, just to think about any soldier, think about the people nowadays on the front lines, Gaza, other places. There's a tremendous, unbelievable mesiras nefesh that these people have. But we always talk about the Akedah. It's the Akedah specifically, and the the sense of what it's all about. The Panovich Rav explained is that Avram Avinu and Yitzchak both walked into the Akedah with questions. They had questions. Avram Avinu had a question. He says, "I don't get it. I'm being told I have to sacrifice my child. At the same time, I'm told that I'm going to have a whole nation come out of this child. Well, wh- which is it? It can't be both. There's no clarity in what he was doing. There was a place we've spoken about this on Rosh Hashanah before, how we have a description of an ununkosher al hahar, that there was a cloud that was on top of the mountain, that as they were ascending the mountain, Avram and Yitzchak, they saw that there was this cloud up there. So it indicates that like there's this cloudiness, there's this inability to see, and yet recognizing that Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do something with a ko, with like a kind. Ko means kind of like that. It's not this. It's not zeh. It's ko. It's like this. Something similar. Like it's saying something over with a lack of clarity. Yesod of Yiddishkeit and the Yesod of Mesiras Nefesh comes from the Akedah because so many things about what it is or what it is that Kodesh Baruch Hu wants from us are so unclear to us. There's this lack of clarity, and at the same time, an expectation and a desire for an absolute commitment from Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Bitachon and Emunah, like the faith that we have in Hakadosh Baruch Hu, putting our lives in His hands. It doesn't require understanding of exactly, oh, that's the point of this and this is the point of that. We don't have that. That's our essence is baked into us from the time of Avram Avinu. That listen, we don't understand what is going on over here, but we understand that what we have to do is for Hakadosh Baruch Hu anyway. The unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh, like when you hear stories of and it tracks through the generations in an unbelievable way. You have stories at the time of the Holocaust. You know the story, the famous story is told of Bergen-Belsen when it was the first night of Hanukkah and the Nazis, always with their eye on the Jewish calendar, have a tremendous action where they go and they pull just random people out of their barracks and shoot them in front of everybody in order to destroy the spirit, besides killing people, destroy the spirit of everyone else there. And how that night, nonetheless, someone had gone and figured out how to get oil, and they put it together. And the story is told of, I don't remember what one of the one of Patience Rebbe, I'm not sure which Rebbe it was, that he was he was in the Fleisenberger, maybe he was in the barracks, and they had managed to put together through getting a little shoe polish and a little this and a little that, and they put together enough to be able to light the first night menorah. So he goes and he makes the first bracha, L'Hadik Ner Shel Chanukah. Then he makes the second bracha, right, Shasanisim, right, Lavasenu. And then by the third bracha, he hesitates. And he looks around. And then he goes and he makes the bracha, Shehechiyanu. And there was somebody there who was a member of the Bund who, went over to the Rebbe right afterwards, and he said that you made the first bracha Seder. Makes sense. That's this is the mitzvah that you believe in. So you make the bracha. The second bracha, right? Shasanisim lavasinu bayim mehem bezman hazeh. Okay, that's a very uplifting thought right now. That if you believe in miracles, that this would be a wonderful time for a miracle. So yes, that's an uplifting bracha. Shehechiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Serious? Like that Hashem kept us alive to this time? Really? And the Rebbe said, I'll be honest with you, is that I hesitated because I wasn't sure myself whether that was an appropriate bracha. When I turned around and I saw a barrack full of Jews who are enduring the most horrific hell on earth, who showed up for the mitzvah of Hadlakas Neres Chanukah, said, I have no idea what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. But maybe one of the things that he's interested in his world is seeing people who are beaten down to the edge of life, who still want to come and experience a mitzvah. Maybe that's the whole purpose of this whole thing. Maybe Hashem wants to see if this is alive and well within the Jewish people. Such a sensation. So then I said the bracha, you know something? Kadosh Baruch Hu, Shehechiyanu, V'kiyamanu, V'higiyanu, Lazman Hazeh. This is a time that you kept us alive for, that you want this to happen in your world, to show that this Mesiras Nefesh is something that's still there. And when we fast forward and we hear stories of the hostages in the tunnels of Gaza who find the sitter, who figure out what day is Yom Kippur, and they decide, I'm going to fast today. It's Yom Kippur. I'm going to fast. I'm going to daven what I can daven. So you can think to yourself, okay, well, something like, what else do they do? Chas v'shalom. The idea that there is that sense that lies within every single Jew, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us in places that we don't understand why we are here. And it does not push us away from him, but rather it draws us to him. It belies any kind of logical understanding. It doesn't make sense. Get angry at Hashem. Say, Hashem, you're not here. But that's not what we do. Because from the beginning of our peoplehood, Avram Avinu put it into Klal Yisrael that the Akedah was all about that even in the place where there's just no clarity, where it's just a big cloudiness, kinda, I think, maybe, yeah, sort of like this, Kadosh Baruch Hu's there, and our commitment to him is alive and well. And it's it's that knowledge, it's that internal sense that we tap into when we think about Kadosh Baruch Hu. How could it be we're in a place right now where we don't understand where we are, but it creates a sense within us that not that our longing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu becomes chas v'shalom weaker, but it makes it all the more strong. Eiko, Omer, next Kini Dalit 14, page 198. So we have again, Echa Asher Kvar Asahu. This is something that already from the beginning of time was programmed in that there were going to be the possibility of korbanos, something that is programmed in from the beginning because the idea that there's a churban, the idea that there's a destruction that is already kind of pre-planned shows that our world and our connection to Hashem is made to have these ups and downs. It's made to be broken, but then fixed up again. Not something that was supposed to be permanent and then broken, something that's permanent and then broken. You can use all the super glue in the world, it's not going to come back together again. But if something is designed to be taken apart and then put back together, then we know that we can regain this connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a line in this Kinnah that describes how there were a few times where there was a sense of maybe there should be a Gilui case. Maybe there should be a revelation of when is the end of this gullus. Right now we're in a gullus that is to home. It's endless. It's just it just doesn't seem to have an endpoint to it. and it keeps on going and going and going. And why was there not? When Yaakov Avinu wanted to be Megala Kates, when Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal what is the end of time, when is all of this going to end? Why didn't ultimately Hashem allow it? Why doesn't Hashem want us to know when it ends? Do you know something? If a person is given a target date of something, and on that date there's going to be a wonderful event, sometimes instead of focusing on the wonderful event, instead of focusing on the thing, a person just gets locked in on the date. If we would have a time where we knew that we were going to be reconnected to Hashem. Let's just think about like the way we perceive like the whole concept of Mashiach and Geula. It's basically like, we got problems in life and we say to ourselves, huh, well, Mashiach comes, if we get a Geula, our problems will go away. Like, we totally missed the boat, totally missed the point. It's that there's something called Mashiach, there's something called Geula, and that allows us to be reconnected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the way that we're meant to be. What follows from that is that, yeah, it happens to be that once you're super connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and life is being lived in such a way, then our problems will melt away. But we kind of like we miss the main point and we just grasp onto that the ancillary things. If there would be a date in which we were told that there was going to be a geula, would we be focused on how we're missing this connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Would we focus it all on the idea that we want to get together with Hashem? Or would we just mark it off on our calendars and say, okay, maybe we should get a reminder a week before just that we can kind of like get ourselves into the right frame of mind? And it would just be all about the date. It's not about the date. It's about the thing. It's about the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's about having this bias, having this home, becoming this unit with Hashem. So therefore, Hashem says, don't tell them the time. They can't know the time. They have to know the point. And what they have to long for and what they have to wait for is not the time. What they have to wait for and what they have to long for is that thing of having that unity and that unification back with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kaveh el Hashem. Long for, hope for. Put your kivui in Hashem, not in a date and a year and a time. That's not what it's all about. And that's what, as human beings, that's what we would do. So therefore, there's no Giloi Kates, so that we could hopefully focus on the thing that's important, that connection with HaKadosh Baruch Kinetes Vav 15, page 210. So again, we have this is a Kina that was written by Elazar Kalir, um, and this is bringing out all of the different parts of the third parak of Echa, and um, we have a reference over here, and it's really the pasuk in Echa about how Kodesh Baruch Hu stops our tefillah. How today is not a day of tefillah, and therefore it's so tzak. Like we have a tzaka to Hakadosh Baruch Hu that we try to and Hakadosh Baruch Hu shuts it down. And then, but we also are told that um that we holy shamata al talein, that Hashem says, "I heard your voice." So it's almost like, which one is it? Is it that we can be soik to Hashem? Sounds like not. Sounds like that tefillah to Hashem, sasam tefillasi, that my tefillah was shut down, was it was silent. But then it says koli shamata, like I heard your call, I heard your voice. And there are there are really two forms of tefillah, two forms like if you can have a situation where I see somebody that's on the way to my house. I see them like coming up the path. So, I quickly like, shut the lights, pull down the shades, and I pretend I'm not home. I act like I'm not home. So they come, they knock on the door, they ring the doorbell, and I ignore them, and I don't listen to them. But when they're standing in front of my door, and then they start crying and screaming that they need help, even after I've done that whole thing of ignoring them and wanting to not be engaged, that may have a totally different effect on the way I react to them. Today is a day where HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us where tefillah in the way that we go and we mouth words and we say things to HaKadosh Baruch Hu about who He is, our relationship with Him, what we need. It's not a day of that. It's a day of bechia. It's a day of crying. It's a day of kina. It's a day of kinos. It's a day of where a person draws from the deepest parts of themselves in reaching out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a day where the 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 name of the name of the game is authenticity, and that any kind of anything that smacks of where you don't have piv v'libo shavin, where you don't have the mouth and the heart equal and as one, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, like, "Not today. Not today. Today's a day of where everything is laid bare and everything is stripped down to its essence, and we have churban, and we are wallowing in the destruction that has befallen us as a nation. If a person can use that in order to really and truly generate something real inside, where they have that sense of longing, of wanting, of connecting, and it becomes a bechia. The originally it becomes a cry. That's something different. The original Tisha B'av was a night when Klal Yisrael heard from the Meraglim how bad Eretz Yisrael was, and they cried, and it was a bechia shel chinam. It was they took something. Crying is the most authentic, one of the most authentic forms of expression, of human expression. When you cry for nothing, when you turn something that's supposed to be authentic into something that's garbage, then a person has in a sense like wrecked the essence of everything that a human being could be. But when a person, today's a day of bechia, authentic crying. When a person is able to tap into that, then a person is able to have koli, my kol, the inner sound, the inner voice that's within me. The real me is crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That Hashem says, Koli Shamata, I heard your voice. That sound is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears. Here, Toivim, tapim, nirchu, bohitifi, limol, malu, nekamutim, vilifol, sov la kevakisa, os, nefrim, terem, terem, nefra, ikamai barachat, nishmer, nishmer, vinam, esve, sem, eser, yata, yava, vipor, kitzar, alpha, vinhana, vata, damyesh, vata, vita, yesh, him, vanaya, naishav, vidam, kavira, lagash, yoy, shot, notin, dashaf, mipisar, notin, market, market, operating from Githard, Beckert, in a sound of earth, Alcohol, renewal from Victor, for some passive slump, noise, not there, the public demand, keeping off about the Gila Casa, Lava, Tassis, Tisha Mare, Archivoy, Diana, Medigo, Archip, Roy, Chama, the Hotan of Chinamas, British, not anything. Loyal, Himla, Fatikis, Robin of Ever, the love, the Daki, Taka, This guy, nature, larger, Erica Pine, the Filipino Campaign. No, but no, first remember, great, now, for that, for me, after the video, to be him up of the our feedback, sub, my competition, attack, promote, so make stuff, think about those to the favorite Bayham, the Kilos and Bigidu Bayham, possible life Bayham, possible far have fair Takas, for life the Fakas Takas, the Fakas, Eric Pass, no need Hickfield, bake him in a county nine say bad. Now flat heritage machine of the service to be meeting but with First about the I keep the grass for us and have tax for Brian in the grass. Also, so you have a rapper, don't make a bad get up covered all of as master all the idea is the law. Also, protect nine of the stuff to get them, but have some of happening and if it's not started, it's not like it's good. The key cost here, Quebec, for certain for doctor, this is a member of the College of Action person, number 30, the College of Light Literary stuff, my Yell Hard to Black, Sursoft, Asmola, the Hard Rossi Trip, Purpose, Monai, Alessi Makimonai, the Rossi Trip Pod, and like like Chile, like Makai, Yeshali, Chimata, Atale, Kalim Kido, Ilam to Maraka, Horship, Maraka, so how do I get the Katim, the Mata, Temper, Temper, against Maka, not after the next train, after the that's my Rock up the big name and tell them about the hand of the commercial physical number for off of tablet with that from us Namda on the camera who give her the the Herbert of Pusher him, but I'm me going up, the train that him the homo is going up, if they come my bag and I'm CC, Stacy, TV, Yad, not something, almost I shipped up to some I should have shown him the summer of the mission him the first. Avoid torture, man, I don't know. The next kina, Kina Tezayin, on page 226, number 16. So there are two parts of this kina. One part talks about Titus coming into the Beis Hamikdash and how he stabs the Parochas, and it bleeds, and he feels like he has defeated Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and the obvious the tremendous Chil Hashem that represents, and then the end of it describes the story that Chazal tell us, the Medrash tells us how he how there were three boatloads of children to Medrash, to Gemara and Gittin, and they took 400 of the finest children, boys and girls of Yerushalayim, and they were going to bring them to Rome, used for all kinds of disgusting, immoral purposes, and how these kids understood what was going on, and they realized what it was that they were going to be used for, and what a tremendous chilul, what a tremendous degradation of their Jewish um, personhood would be taking place. And they decided that they were going to throw themselves into the sea. And in doing so, they ask a question, and they say, is this something that we are allowed to do? Like commit suicide, is this something, are we going to lose our chelik and olam haba if we do something like this? And there is a response that they get that yes, they are not going to. This is something that they are going to be rewarded for, um, and and that is that's the sense that we're given over here in this kina, and it says Heshivu shivu kavo b'nivchayam. So they got a response. Um, they said, like, please, like, bring us back. They cry out. V'shitvu atzmu yachad lipo v'yom. And they put themselves together. And that to make they made a pact amongst themselves to throw themselves into the sea in unison. Shir v'shishbachos sharu kal yom. They sang songs and praises like like we did once upon a time at the Yam Suf. Ki alecha haraknu b'mtzilas yam. Because for your sake we are being killed in the depths of the sea. So it's like this fascinating connection that's being made over here, that there's some sort of um, there's this act of, again, mesiras nefesh, that these kids are able to sacrifice for Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and somehow it's connected to the act of going into the Yam Suf. That the shiras v'sishbachos of the Yam Suf somehow connect to the way these kids are going through their act of throwing themselves into the sea. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is, we described before how the Gullus, and how Gullus is something that is the home, that's ultimate depth. To home, like the idea of like an endless depth, is something that is like, it's the zelu umazeh. Everything that's created in this world has like a positive and a negative. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu, we know, is the infinite of good, and to whom, while not quite infinite, but to whom depths is almost like the infinite. It's the opposite. It's the infinity, or the seeming infinity, of evil, of bad. When we, and right now we find ourselves in a gullus that's seemingly endless, where we just don't have any sight, any end in sight. An ocean is looked at as it's referred to in Chazal as mayim she'en lehem sof. It's water that has no end. The ocean, it's so vast, it's so huge that it's something that we look at as being just this infinite, endless thing that any little human being that gets dropped into it, they are just lost in the vastness of whatever that ocean is, of that water. When when someone when Klal Yisrael sang at the Yam Suf, it was they walked into something that was a they were coming to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Like Nachshon ben Aminadab, he didn't know that the sea was going to split, but he said, "I'm told to go forward, and I'm going towards Hakadosh Baruch Hu." And while one could look at it as I am entering a place where I'm going to be destroyed and never be seen again, never be heard from again, be lost forever in the infinite waters of this world, he looked at it as something totally different. He said, I'm walking into something that's infinite, but it's the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I'm moving towards. And the shira that was sung by the Yamsuf, Uz Yashir Moshe, the fact that it's Uz, it's referring to a Tchias HaMesim. Uz Yashir, we say, what's the source of Tchias HaMesim in the Torah? Uz Yashir Moshe. Then they will sing. Because the act of Kriyas Yamsuf, the act of Klal Yisrael's dedication to Hashem and saying that, like, Hashem, we are just coming to you. That's where we're going. That's what we're entering into over here. We're not looking this as the Yamsuf. We're looking at this as heading to you. That was that act that was reflective of the fact that a Yid, a Jew, who is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is never lost. They never disappear. Instead of being lost in the infinite waters, you're actually found in the infinity, in the everlasting infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that's where a person is going. These kids jumping off, we don't know their names. We don't know who they are. They certainly never had offspring. So one could argue they were lost. It's as though they never existed. But think about it. Here we are, hundreds, thousands of years later, and we're still talking about them. And we're talking about them as this is what it means to plug into the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to live forever. So they ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they say, where are we going to be? Like, is this something that we can do? Are we allowed to do this? Are we just heading into absolute destruction? Kita homos bo ad nafsham. The depths, they reach their souls. But Hashem says, "Ki calls those for asnu v'lo shechachnucha." We've come to this, and we haven't forgotten you. Chilu l'mamoshan. We are going to have a mamoshus. We are going to have a reality. We are not lost. We live forever in you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When the idea again of is the person getting lost when they die al Kiddush Hashem, or is the person actually going home? Are they finding themselves in that home with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a home that doesn't have a physical place, but a home that's real and a home that's eternal and a home that's infinite? That's where these people went. And it's tikvasim nasim uleveshiv mi bashan. And their hope was given to them from the one who answers from the bashan, from the dry land, from reality. That's where they really brought themselves. They found themselves home in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even nowadays, as we live in a world where, Baruch Hashem, it's on a smaller scale, but where we've seen in the not so distant past, little children hacked to pieces, little children killed. And forget about little children, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who haven't had a chance to start their lives yet, who haven't had a chance to get married, to have children, to make their mark on this world. And they're going out there for something that's important and for something that's big and for something that's real, and it's for Klal Yisrael. Are they lost? Chas v'shalom. They're not lost. They're actually the ones who come home. They're actually the ones who plug in to the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. they're the ones that aren't lost. And as we think about all of those who have been in this situation over the ages, over the centuries, over the millennia, that's what we take heart in the fact that these are people that have found their way home. These are people that aren't lost. And it's that sense of longing for that connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that these people were able to make real. They were able to make it who they were and what they were all about. And it's plugging into that sense that brings us home as well. Yisoy mi p'yel b'magay, yidmei adam me'efemer efemer adam dam, mimenu dolach ve'eshir chitav midam, yetzam min habayit v'char b'char gever ben etzah, el yachet b'zot gever mitzrayim b'kolachon, ibav gavar ni b'tzati b'yoyer b'tzara, yichnis b'bakarim, bakarim aflai, b'tezen etzah, yitzon etzah, abadim chitu b'tzah, libat eich almed, beit eich b'tzah, Minafshina Tavanu, Sharit, Shabam, Rakayit, Sharit, Aredu Namaki, Nothing part of the Karka by Namba, Nampatu, the boy for the bit, me back what the government which we were met about not the written of the Shiva, India, Boyton, Epic, Promoting Barbara, Almi, Dave, Pascal, Carbon, at the new Kashmir, Carbon. Carbide, Yellow Boy, Yara Barber, Kate, After a Black, Victoria, Barber, Village, the Tugga, Carcass, out of the adaptive version, one of the signature, which have no Lama Rock, Look at them, which is the typical yum, which is back to Yaka, the Papa Yum, here with the Traffic, Yum, Yaka, Yum, eat the after process, look at us, no, the Mamma, take a dog that to the make version about something of Lama. The next kina, kina Yud Zayin, very difficult kina, where we have descriptions in Tochana Nashim Piriam Olale Tefuchim, where we have parents losing the Rachmanos, children for their children. We have children losing their Rachmanos, having it ripped out of them when it comes to their parents, because in desperate times, people just become so focused on survival that essential need to take care of one's children or for a child to care for the parent is something that gets ultimately rooted out of them. Stories told of in Majdanek where the remainders of the Warsaw Ghetto were taken there, and there was a Jew who they decided to hang. Decided to hang. So the Nazis, in their diabolical way of thinking, they found that, oh, this father, right, has a 14-year-old son here in the camp. And so they set it up that the father was put in the gallows, and the person who had to kick the chair out from underneath was the child. And they go and they put the child up there, and he goes and he kicks the chair out from under his own father, and the rope snaps. And instead of saying, "Okay, I guess this isn't meant to be," no, they go, they get a new rope, and once again, you have the Ben Kamba Aviv. They have this design of the father of the child coming up against and having to kill his own father. A depth of evil that is almost impossible to fathom. Panovich Arav, famously, like when he was in Eretz Yisrael, so he opened up an orphanage for, and it was initially for the so many children, who had survived the war without their parents, and he spoke at the Chanukah Sabayis at the when it was opened. He spoke and he says, you know, it says that at the times of Mashiach, there's going to be a thing where the children are going to, in a sense, be like chutzpahdik to their parents. That they're going to say to the parents like, ah, what do you know? Right? He says, what does that mean? Like, what is that a reference to? He said, it's a description of a churban, not just a churban of like disrespect, but a churban like this. He says that there will be a time when a young person is going to be able to say to their parents, where somebody who's 10 years old is going to be able to say to somebody who's 70 or 80 years old, I've seen things that your eyes couldn't even imagine. And that was something that happened in the Holocaust, where you have young children ending up in Eretz Yisrael, people who are in Eretz Yisrael. They couldn't even imagine what those young children had seen, said the Panovich Rav. That's what it's talking about, when you have young children who have seen things like that. And think about our world today, when you have, again, young children who have seen things with their own eyes that we adults here in Chutz La'aretz, we could only, we think we could imagine. We couldn't imagine. And when that sort of churban, the churban that happens within, the churban of youth having their innocence robbed from them, that's part of the difficulty of this gullus that we find ourselves in. Im tafana nash fer yom haladet tufay baladadi. Im tavashel nash mach maria tila dip hamat mit tafay baladadi. Im tegoyt na atro sham mit kana sim tafay baladadi. Im tavak yenik the tate. Im inta khima baladadi im tahemna. Duba mazu boy bnash navashelet badina tafay baladadi. Ba'adna duba ibne tu kaboy mit tafay baladadi. Nana basara boy tabanim. Bimorot bchite baladadi. Yabra bonus على ذلك انتهينا روح يتقدم برخبات يا سوف ما ذلك يا كان بشكل واحد في مقتدائهم فإما بنمسا في الشخص ما ذلك فكان بشمال ما يسمى تبع بعض على ذلك امتلاحاتنا روحا بمن متخفنا يدرسنا بخف على ذلك امتلاحاتنا ما ألف ما يوم ما هسرع أخذ ما بخف على ذلك امتلاحاتنا لما سافر على ذلك انت ترعب نشم خلاص تم نفشات كي تم كسر ماذا ذا ترعب نادم نادي شمعين ألف فايدة كسر ماذا ذا فكاكنا نفشات كسر بيبيع كسر ماذا ذا انت تفعلوا على بنا كاس كحاب توي في جلد النوسين على انت تعنا توش ميزون كما شركة كاس على هاي الكبار فكرت أبغى نتاجات رابطة ماذا ذا شركة Hoya culture China Aberdeen Mahagri Mayatim Face Ashera Sulu Merdi in the Fano Imperial Maxim Bimir Bimikar Kadoi Intravi Loimak. The next Kina Yud Ches 18, page 236. We ask Hashem, Ata Amarta Hetiv Etivimach, you said that things were going to be good. So why is it that all of these terrible things are befalling us? V'ata tzaddik, right? We say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you're the tzaddik al kol haba, that you're the tzaddik for everything that comes. There's a midah of tzaddik. We all we want when we think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu is we want chesed. Chesed, chesed, chesed. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives this to us. But when somebody dies, we say something that's called, Rahman al we say something called tziduk hadin, where we see the tzedek, we see the righteousness, we see the how things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way He designs our world, that it is correct, it is right. And recognizing that there's a reason for everything. When we think about our gullus and we think about the Churban, we think about all when promises when we think that, "Hey, Hashem, didn't you say that you were gonna do this?" And, "Hey, Hashem, didn't you say you were gonna do that?" And we don't look inside of ourselves and realize that, like, maybe the reason these things aren't coming true is for tzedek, is for righteous reasons, because we're not pulling our weight, because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. It's a two-way street, and when we fail, right? A person has to own their side of a relationship. And if we fail at doing that, so then the tzedek is lost, the righteousness is lost, the correctness is lost. And that is part of what we lament over here, our inability to see how that is that Hashem, you said all these things are going to be good and they're not good. Yeah. Look in a mirror and understand why. Beata Marte Tipi Tipi Mafnif Leader Kesher Yitzhak Ate Nakta Devash Misela Betetinis Misela Balamash they tell out the like a milk at the so go you look at go me care go bel ma fash all our guy go me look over na academic guy at the tesa chichi mu when him the hobby guy show me with him lama yus mu ma him fa am him am to back to him at the band of the chabas I that of our that on tell you min of your that lama lo tar hey shaft you min your that of the bel he take right that of the other man I agree showing Fanatami Ramirishan, Velamani, Russia, Bevelashan, at Kinos at Sarvation, at the Sasta, the Tavalemoi, the Safety, Velama, Terif, Omar, Ela, Hemoi, Asher, Calcalib, Hemoi, at the Rasmus, Yamata, still the same, Yam Vilamatalati, at Nipayam, Yigdal, Shibrik, 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 Batakadoshi, Shifty, Lucky, Shimamukudashim, Velama, Sugar, Yim, Am Kadeshim. Beishi Mubait Koder Shakadosh Tinukia, Terpa, the Tukas Cooperation is Pavlamativa, Vala, Nakalas, Supov, Tatmia, Krupova, Leno, Bataka Kapa, Alkalaba, the Father Nate, the Covenacti, Tenacti, Costa Tiba, Velamano Hino Volano Hadi Baki, so it's for us, he possessed us, no, the McKinney Yates, page 240, number 19. L'chashem tzedakah, v'lonu boshas hapanim, where we talk about how we only have things to be embarrassed about. And it's like time and time again. You know, somebody asks you, "Can you get me a job?" And you get them a job, and uh, you do them this favor, and they go into your company, and they totally blow it. And then they come back to you again, and they say, "Hey, can you get me a job?" And maybe that second time, you say like, "Okay, fine. Last time was a fluke. I'll get you a job again." And then that doesn't go well. They fail again. The busha of having to go back again and say, "Hey, can you help me out? Can you get me a job?" Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us a Beis Hamikdash, and then He destroyed it. And then we said, "Hashem, do we have a Beis Hamikdash again?" And then He gave us another one. And then, well, it had to be destroyed. And now we're going and we're asking again. Hashem tzedakah v'lono boshas hapanim. All we have is this boshas panim. All we have is this embarrassment. This is who we are, Kadosh Baruch Hu. But nonetheless, please have rachmanos on us. Father, no tzedakah boshas Hashem, tzedakah yadav v'lono boshas hapanim. Next Kina Chaf, number 20 on page 244. We have a description of Hashem. Hatei Elokai Aznacha. We want Hashem to listen. Lisifletzes mina etzes mili vashemayim. To those who blaspheme, saying, "Who is there to fear in Shemayim?" There is a nature of our enemies. Yes, there are enemies of people, and it's even happened with us at times where, listen, people are jealous. They want your money. They want your things. They don't like you. So they come, and there's a destruction that takes place, and that's a horrible thing. That's a normal form of conquering. But when there are people who want to be oiker, they want to uproot the foundation of who we are, that it's not just enough to just have a quote unquote regular pogrom killing people, but you have people like the Soviets, the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, dealing with wanting to root out the Shar HaShemayim, wanting to root out HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the midst of our world. We have to open our eyes and our ears. We want Hashem. Hashem, listen to what's going on in this world. Listen to the crazy things that are being said about your people. Listen to the things the lies that are being cast about what it means, those that are part of Hashem's nation, those who believe in Hashem. Hashem, we want you to hear that, because the overwhelming sound that fills the world is this hatred of the Jewish people, is the sound where we are turned into the oppressors, where we are looked at as the people who are immoral. It's such a horrifying thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, can you hear that? Can you hear that that's what's being attributed? There was a ritual that took place in the Janowska camp where the Ukrainians and the Nazis, after sending out the Jews for their backbreaking labor that they were doing, as they came back into the camp, so they would be lined up on two sides. The soldiers and the guards would be lined up on two sides, and the prisoners would have to walk through. And as they were walking through, the people would, the guards would call out. They'd ask the following question. They'd say, "Who is the race that is the most, perfect and well designed?" And of course, they'd have to answer the Aryan race. "And who are the most disgusting, filthy pigs that exist on planet Earth?" And they'd have to scream, "The Jews." And this would go every single day, again and again and again. They would go through this thing, and they would have to say, "Who is the most wonderful race?" It's the Aryans. "And who is the most disgusting, vile?" It was the Jews. And the Jews had to be the ones giving these answers as they were beaten as they walked into the camp. There was someone who had been a very wealthy person, and he had actually been able to smuggle a lot of his money into the camp. and he turned to someone he was with and he said, "Listen, I can't deal with this anymore. I was able to swap 2,000, whatever the currency was, for 2 cyanide pills. You want one?" So the person who he offered it to was from Yid and said, "I'm sorry that as much as I'd like to end my life right now, this is not something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do." And the person said, "I just there are certain parts of what's going on over here that I can't take. I just can't take it anymore." So he didn't know the frum Jew who I read the story from, didn't know what he was gonna do. The next day, they're coming back in after work, and the Nazis call out, "What is the most precious race? What is the highest race?" And all of a sudden, there's a scream, "The Jewish people!" They stop. Say, "We're gonna try this again. What is the most" and again, a scream, "The Jews!" The Nazis are furious, and they come pushing their way through the crowd to see where is this voice coming from that is describing the Jews as the most amazing race that exists, and the Aryans as the most despicable race that exists. And they finally reached, they push everyone aside and they get to this person, and they find him on the ground, a smile on his lips, took a cyanide pill. But the thing that he couldn't stand was to hear that sheker, to hear that lie being the Jewish people themselves having to express that lie. Who's the most vile race? Who's the most exceptional race? That there was something that this person couldn't stand, that he couldn't take, about the blasphemy that was coming from the mouths of the Nazis, and that the Nazis were making come out of the mouths of the Jews. And it was his dying wish. The thing that he died for was to be able to set that truth straight. The next kina that we say, Arze Levana Nadire Torah, is talking about the Sarah Herugi Malchus, similar to the what we say on Yom Kippur during the Avodah, describing how these great, great, great tzaddikim were murdered as a kapara for Klal Yisrael, and describing and giving us a sense of this loss, and in general the loss that we've had over the ages of such greatness from Klal Yisrael. There's a line where there's a description of Yotzer Tsar V'Tzura, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is described as the creator of Tsar V'Tzura, of images, of forms. When we think about who these people were, and what we've lost as we lose our gedolim throughout the generations, as we have people who are representatives of what it means to be Ovdei Hashem, those who serve Hashem, and throughout the generations, these people have been killed in the wars, etc. They are a tzura. They are an image. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu made man in the tzura of himself, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that there's going to be a Tzelem Elokim. These are the people that were the Tzelem Elokim. And the loss of these people is a shaking of the foundation of our world, and it gives us a sense of the omek, of the depth of the destruction. Tachri, Azak Bamaracham Das Yisrael, Kodesh Neser Batara Tervi, Le Patricia, Kodesh Neser Yadu Gorobli Mishan Naher, Kabel Rabba Mishabel, Kachata, Prabhatin Sokateva, Rabban Shibun Chazar Behekman, Hargoy Ben Efesh, Nisrabi Sarabah, Shabbat Bakashat, Toital Ben Hagen. Not a worship, not an alcohol, self minerva, Sahiva, Samina, Balena, Piv, Alpiv, Abba, Ana ba amar pam beskaber betra pisa piknasa Allah pisa pikna bakabra tiba da pisa betra pisa tiba kiam ba ibraya brother nafsha tipna ba Russia haposhet etiki ele from still mitzvahs for stocks or covenants as Allah merited for your Rob Yakara Pepi with Rebbe Akiva Oiker Harim Beterchen and Zubizu Bispa Robert Darko Robi Matrix Brazil Sabra Nayat Sanish Mataiba for the Basel Amra Rebbe Akiva Fox Star Combination Ben Baba Rabbi Huda Rabbi Pio Bishop Burnley Pasabra Narak Ben Chipum Shana Bidea Rabbi Ship Sadis Ayana Kipa Fasid Maka Mara Rabbi Khanina Ben Radiana Karab Makil Kilos Bidyan Shara Yoshe Vidare Vise Vetere Mavi Kipu Bakabli Maratori Sahamu Sarfu Vetera Lukim Shel Semahini Fali Boshley Musmehira Classic Rabbi Shiva Basavara Gumema Amamara Mizar Kubish Lifu that club him so he cracks Kubra Yakasa Basala Lapshan and Service Mishada Shamra Zakara Rabbi Footbis Via Membra Oifa Perak Nisra Favel Pim Mizra Tadik Rabbi Allah Ben Shema Bakran and Rabbi Makiva Yomer Sheva Soyisimia Man Kidushi Kadish Vikra Arab shall for Allah that he nisho b'chayim legabra yatzad nishmasa b'barelu him yater b'tzar tzra kahina b'chayina otifu b'nei avla la'ana b'gabra b'kila straight b'harik b'chenek miuchal sha'abra noistaner noisteres b'mena yochlu abra yosef b'tzra kazeh hatinu fa'b'shar ketru mater fu'arye v'akshira yeti v'adin oibla yosef yasra amit b'kayim koshelois chelik Yaakov Moshe v'Estera the tzedek im lo shmelas yad marshal yimei avlech 37 The next Kinach of Bays 22 on page 254 is the first of a few different kinos that we have about the Crusades and the way the Kahilos, the way those communities reacted to it. There are stories already. Rishonim talk about it, about how in some of the situations the parents killed their own children in order to save them from the shmad, in order to save them from the desire of the church to turn our people into enemies of Torah, enemies of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a description where the Lo zachinu legadelchem the Torah, we didn't have a zechus, where the parents lament how They put their kids to death, and they didn't have the opportunity to raise them in a Torah life. Nakrivchem ka'ola v'haktara. We're going to bring you to Hashem like a carbon, like ketores. V'nizke imachem la'oira hatzefuna me'in kol va'aluma. And we're going to share with you the Or Hatzafon, the hidden light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a certain element of Torah that is what we're familiar with, which is Gashmi, which is physical. Vishinantam lefanecha teaches us that we have to teach our children Torah. We have to teach them the Torah. We have to teach them the mitzvahs. There's another part of Torah which is something that is almost unteachable because it's not something that we can exactly show them by example, which is the idea that who you are is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in such a profound way that when it comes time for Kiddush Hashem, or for a person to give his life al Kiddush Hashem, that's something that we do. And it's not something that a parent normally teaches. It's very hard to sort of teach that. But what these parents are expressing is that lo zechinu legadelchem l'Torah. We didn't have the opportunity to be megadol you, to raise you in regular Torah. But you know something? In the Or Hatzafon, we are able to pass on to you what it means to die for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm able to teach you the deepest part of what it means to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The idea that parents have this sense of wanting to give over to their children the purity, the reality of what it is. And for us to imagine a time of crusade, a time where it was just about like, do you believe in Yashka or not? That was the whole thing. It wasn't about land. It wasn't about Gaza, things like that. It was about like if you are Jewish and you have the Jewish belief system, then you are essentially flawed and an enemy. And we are going to go and rip that identity out of you. That's what a crusade was. And the idea that these people went and that they sacrificed themselves to children, al Kiddush Hashem. There's a description in a later Kinos about the Crusades that we're not going to, seems like we're not going to have time for today, where there's a Chazal, where Chazal tell us that every drop of blood that is shed al Kiddush Hashem becomes part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's royal purple robe. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu has kaviyachol, some sort of purple robe that is made up of all of the blood of all of the people who have died al Kiddush Hashem. Rav Chaim Vital, Talmud of the Arizal, writes that regardless of the tzidkus, regardless of how a person lived their life, the tikkun, the ultimate fixing that a person who dies al Kiddush Hashem gets, is so absolute that the malchus of Hashem, the kingdom of Hashem, is built on the back of those people. That what defines a person ultimately, a person can live a whole life without Torah, without mitzvahs, whether it's on purpose, whether it's not on purpose, whether they're tinag yishanishba. But when a person dies al Kiddush Hashem, it doesn't matter what their life is all about. They are zoicha to have, they merit being able to have a tikkun and being able to be part of this Or Hatzaf and being able to tap into and become part of that hidden light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They are the ones upon whom the Malchus, ultimately, who shows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is their Melech, the people who literally give their lives for him. And as we think about crusades of so many years ago, of so long ago, but it's on the backs of those people that we live, that the Malchus Shemayim, that the kingdom of heaven is ultimately going to be able to be revealed. Nowadays, those that are being Mekadeshim Shemayim, those that are giving their lives because they're Jewish, because they're fighting and they are sacrificing themselves for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Those are the people that are Zoicha to this Or Ein Sof. They're the people that are Zoicha to this light, this Or HaTzof, and this hidden light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we think about what it was for these people to sacrifice themselves in our own ways, every single way that we can think of giving ourselves over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sacrificing something, making going that extra mile for him is our way of emulating them and being Mekadeshem Shemayim in the same way. Echarishu mimenu v'ad aveiro v'yavor alai. How much of sacrifice איך שבאס מסויס פארט צום קול פאדים פאר 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 פאליט אנא פאליט אויבער דיי אסטער צו די לאבי ביי הויג אויס מיט פאר דיי באקער ביי דער סאכן פאר דויט ניט פאסטן קאט דיי פאר נאפטער אלידה אלס פאר די אסטער לייף wie ik daar daar bij het begin daar dat heet gemeen zeg ja of het everything stack for us so it have our hair go here to the for all castle that the map diva is only know all that step diva a label can you get there before after time ever it is bad to appreciate the terror the cadence has the hana Tisha the substance to Ezra lead of a Bira Tyra belief or ya Lavados together to be Rabbanim Tirasipara Avalazaru Givura Yisabra the Halom Rosh the Great Tetra Lemo Dibra Bami Rolo Zahino the Gadel Sam Latera Nakrib Sam Kaila Bahakara it is Kayma Kim the Ira Hatsuna Inkal Baluka Yesiva Hiba Bakoni Hiariba Otiskimu Gudalim Bukdanim the Kabel Baba Ditra Hin Oidim Kenim Tishanim Bivananim Hem Hayut Kila Dikodim Yas the Kwasama Tepanim and Hagu Hamanim Hamadim it is Overprod Pidarim in Hartsteinim Baba Tasher Hayu Rahmanim the Heful After Kayanim Pitu Alavoid Babanim we check up on all we should put cut for Halakos the Sakinim Bakarim Malay Toila Nim Hey Lokas of Marketani Churchanim for the first bit road Tasanim Minuta Hoist the Herib Idonim the food to Hal Adas the Voice to Herbert Tinim last video I had to the house of the action by my man the Torah Chigri Sak Biz Balshit Averim Athlete Abel Yochid Asi Lost with Betamrim I'll say Mishoy Taya to birthday Machmorim Malakaya the Fire to my Madrim the Urchem Arche Miatre had to be Mifan Ache the Bunayak Magali Misterim Yakatebik voice to be assassinated Beharim me farek havayot mi saret jibarim mi afid durot mi arach nidarim mi shadet mama kayef khatu eikarim mi lakab lakam kayef bi yeshu bi sharim kama abdu bin abdu jibarim akri hamaskidim turkiya zaharim binu mukhoshalam na khu sharim oy ba boy shoy to shefa the night rim mit binas nefesh khafim mit rim so yane kain sama mit close to rim every maybe think the very book of the Miguel rim mi mare de bayer him asharim mi khutche kla kayf avde be makhatrim at most I tabit roya concept in kadei turban pasha through for the rim to look for liktarim kitirim the business tibutim hikilu ham to rim how the tafek at don't police it come down this back am I am rim mi showed any and katrim I'm sure be pasha the rim rim mi khama itam about hakima kind of picture obviously Ibrahim of Next Kina, Kina Chav Gimel, is a very, very moving story that Chazal tell us, again in Gemara and Gittin, that Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, one of the Atzara Hebrew Malchus, so he had a son and a daughter who were taken into captivity. And they were both, Rabbi Shmuel himself was an extremely handsome person, and that handsomeness was something that was a reflection of his inside that came out. And he had these two children who were also very, very, very beautiful, good looking. So they are sold into slavery. And two guys are talking in the bar, and one of them says to the other, "Wow, you should see, I got this guy. He is just this unbelievable, good-looking guy um, that I got as a slave." And the other one says, "Wow, I got a very, very good-looking woman as a girl as a slave, and maybe we should mate them and be able to have, very, very beautiful, strong slaves come from them." And the deal is made, and they go and they put them together in a room. And the story is and the Kina relates this very powerfully. How he's sitting in one corner, she's sitting in another corner, and he's talking about how could he, the son of the Kohen Gadol, who comes from Aaron HaKohen, how could he be put into such a compromising position, so disgusting that he's going to have to be with some other shifcha, some other maidservant, and she's sitting in the corner and saying how she's the boss, she's the daughter of the Kohen Gadol, and the daughter of the Kohen Gadol we know has halachic. There are halachic differences that she has just because she's the daughter of a Kohen. A bas Kohen is someone who has different halachas. If they do averas, they have different punishments because of their yichus. And then as morning comes, they realize that the, that their brother and sister, and that they embrace, and they're crying they're crying over what has befallen them. Both of their neshamas leave them in absolute purity. And there's something that we see over here about how there is an absolute Yerusha that is being reflected over here. How he sees himself as the Kohen. I'm from special stock, and how she sees herself as there's something that I got from my parents. There's something that I got from my grandparents. There's something that I got. There's an essential kedusha that is within me. That regardless of any kind of churban, it's still there. And what this shows us is that regardless of whatever churban may be taking place, regardless of whatever destruction may be taking place, the inner panim, the innerness of every single Kohen, every single Jew, is something that always remains untouched, despite all of the churban that takes place. That's Navi Chatat Shmima, B'dimis Yal Techayas Shmima, Hina Hiya Riba, Hima Miyamim Shmima. Eva Levinichem Chadal Chadol, Bikol, Ev Dibay Nibdal Badol, Albeinu Basra, Malkin Gadol, Zerfat, Nikotum Babias, Rabbi Miyamim Shmima. Niku, Binaflulish Neavinim, Hemshechim, Mazet, Afro Delta, and your name, Damamishabas, Yoni, Tribute, Color with Sarah, give Yami Baba, Yami, but AOC for the Flying Pananim, speaker to Lion from each Abedi Fay, Never Sister, Ryan, going into the Zab game, Benaka, Time, the Flood, Smoke, Mine. Those Kitalana, Naim, Lizeka, Matea, Prima, Hima, Hima, Azot, Yakan, Larv, Duka, Boom. בחדר אחד ועד לפחות אחד והם בוכים במענפש בפחד עד בוקר בחייתם להתמימה בוכים במיימים ובסל בקיר ילד ימצא נינא רון ינסי וגם היא תיאלה בתגרה שסבת כבד איך לאבד ינסי אוי כי זויס כזרה מביא אוי סל זויס יפתור כסל בתימה בוכים במיימים ארבע כזבת להקי קיבוי היה חי תקשיבו Nisabu Yaka Binisababu, Adjata Nishmasam Binishmaba, Hiba, Tikani Bishia, Gitera, Saminari, Kikati Kadi, Albino Basket, Fade Rap, Baba, Hiba, Vikona Hi, Arima. The next, Kino of Dalit, which again talks about the Korban Beis Hamikdash, Kihuras v'Chihudash. The idea that we have a world of Kedusha, a world that was lost, captured, taken away. It's a funny thing that we don't search to find and redeem what we can. Like, we're not running around searching for lost arks and menorahs. There's a video this year about the menorah, but like it could be that has to do with halacha, that like we're tameh, so therefore if we found the clay hamikdash, would we be able to touch them? I'm not sure, but it seems that these things are buried and hidden, and it's almost like a test for us. We have even things nowadays. We have people who are lost, who are hidden, who are buried underground. And while we sense and we have an internal sense of the horror of that reality, it's a little bit scary and a little bit sad how quickly we forget and how quickly we go on living our lives while there are people, our brothers, our sisters, who are still in that situation. The buried kalim of the mikdash are things that we, quote unquote, have forgotten about. And unfortunately, they're not alive in our minds. They don't keep us awake at night that we don't have them. And we have a little bit of a marshal to it nowadays of hostages that are buried, they're alive, they're somewhere. Does it make us lose sleep at night? I don't remember which one, but one of the Gedolim, um, B'nai Brak, as when there were hostages that were taken, he slept on the floor. And while sleeping on the floor was something in in his 90s, and at a certain point being on the floor wasn't healthy for him, so he took his mattress off his bed, and he has a wooden board that he sleeps on. And he says, "How can I sleep on a mattress? How could I sleep on something soft when I know that there are boys and girls who are somewhere buried underneath the ground? They can't sleep on something like that." The idea of retaining that sensitivity to what is missing and to not be able to just go on with life, regular. Yeah, yeah, there's a certain part of life that you have to just move on. It's not healthy to get lost in it, but that it be something that it's in our minds, that it be something that bothers us, that a little bit, it doesn't allow us to live our lives as regularly as we would. That's something that is a sensitivity that we need to keep alive in ourselves. Achor Beis Hamikdash, Kihura, Esper, The hour is getting late, and we're going to jump over here to Kino Lamed Aleph. It's on page number 31 on page 304, where we have a Kina that goes back and forth, contrasting B'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim, what it was like when we left Mitzrayim, and then B'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim, what it's like when we left Yerushalayim, the high and the low. And there's an important message over here for us as we are in Golus, and we find ourselves experiencing, well, sometimes some of the high, but not like B'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim, but experiencing some of the horrors of the lows, especially over the last few years. And the idea that we have this B'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim, B'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim. The idea is that when things are wonderful, and there's Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf and Matan Torah and Beis Hamikdash, that shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we are the apple of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eye, that we have this extremely special treatment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that sets us apart, that makes us different, that shows that we are His. But you know something? B'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim. Nafal, it's Zeresh. Zeresh says that Nafal Tipol tells Haman that, you're Klal Yisrael, they rise, they fall, but you know something? No one rises as high as them, and no one falls as low as them, but they always continue to exist. They always continue, and when they fall down to the bottom, it's not that they disappear, it's not that they're destroyed, but it's that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes them back up. But the Maharsha points out that it's the fall, in the fact that we fall so far, and that we have such unusual negative things happening to us, and we survive them. That is showing that even in those moments, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. That there's no such thing as us being cast away by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us, and He tries to get our attention. B'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim. He tries to create that bond with, as everything is so wonderful as we live in Mitzrayim. But when Chas v'Shalom, we turn our backs on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't ditch us. He doesn't walk away from us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tries to get our attention again. But it's with a harshness. And all that Hashem wants is for us to listen. All that Hashem wants is for us to notice. And then we'll be zocha to the sas and the simcha. We'll be zocha to all of that joy when Shuvi Yerushalayim, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we return to Yerushalayim. Eish Tukat B'Kirbi. Alois Ali Bibates, time Kinim. You brother Manas, you Bibates, Mushline. Oz Yoshimosha, Shir Loyinasha Bibates, Mimit Ryan, Baked Yavana Hanihini, Yabates, Mushline. I knew Shakan Hadon, Bibates, Mimit Time, Bakamasel, Shakna, Alaika, Ana, Novates, Mushline. Gala Yamrahu, Kakamu, Kakoma Kamu, Bibates, Mimit Ryan, the Dunim Shatafu, Algo, Tita, Bibates, Mushline. I'm a Mitoya to my Mitzrayim, Lana Umarim, Umayim Hamarim, Mutual. Harry, the Harry, Mitzrayim, Korea, Lil Abel, Alnaros, Babel, Mutalayim, Umari. But other than Akasha, the Fanai, Mitzrayim, the Herb, the two Charles, Zebach, and the two Charles, Mutalayim. Zebach, Minka, Shem, and Amish, Mitzrayim, so that's a little get in the tip of it, Mutalayim. I give a Shabbos of the verses with the time. And it's Babel, the Rudolph Hebel, the taste mutilai. Oibu Holim Larbo, the Goli, the taste mutilai, Bali, Ishmael, Machana, Saralim, the taste me a taste mutilai. Yovel, the Schmidt of Erichak, the taste mutilai, for that Smith, the taste mutilai. Saparis, Goran, Babney, the Goran, the taste, be Mitzrayim, Babney, Hakala, Liabala, the taste mutilai. Narrow name bishop any bit time next to Muboni Moshe the kind of it like Moshe in a Baronian Kanu of it me Mitzray book at net of under Caesar with the like look about the night show of it me Mitzray but better be in it of it like this ray parochus this ray marachas with the me Mitzray game but takas for like takas with like I thought fucking reaching for him to Mitzrayim. The hair with the car, but it's your name, car, but it's mutual. Nick Boys, the cover, Nick Boys, but they see me with time, three cars destroyed, the color destroyed, they see me like it's just a hub on style. Do I have it? They see me with time, like I need never a pass right there, but they see me time. Show the book, but I don't know the raw. But they see me betraying me, Nicola, Mora of the Rock, Hatuma, but they see me, Shalayim, Bina. Bishop of Hatter, Tatra, but they see me, Mitzrayim, Takas, Lobanakas, Solo, but they see me, Mitzrayim. So, Hanumana, Rob, Tellu, Sarah, but they see Mitzrayim, and live at Sayeva, who first, Lumateva, but they see Mitzrayim. So, Ro, Usudo, Kalehachem, but they see Mitzrayim. So, Soin, Besimcha. Vinas Yagain Vanacha, Bishibu the Rishalayim. Okay, we're going to go now to Kinos, Lamed Vav, on page 328. It is the first of the Sion. As much as today is a day where we focus on the Churban, on what we've lost, it's also a day in which we turn our thoughts to what it is that we hope for. And over here we have the Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the great Paitan, who expressed in his words the desire that we have for Tzion, the desire that we have for Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, a place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shechina is. Sham HaShechina Shechudalach, where we have a description of the Shechina, where he has a picture, he's able to create for himself and for us a sense of what it means to have a bias, a sense of what it means to have this home with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is in Eretz Yisrael, that is in Yerushalayim, that is in the place where it's meant to be. So we're going to say this Kinnah, and then afterwards we will move on to the Kinnah about the Holocaust. Sion, hallo ist nicht alle, das schon mit die Reihe, der Schleim, FM, jetzt hat der Reihe, mit Rach, mit Stefan, mit Simon, Schleim, Rach, Rach, Reihe. Schleim, Asir, Tikvan, sind dem Aufgetal, Kerma, bin ich, Stefan, Tamal, Harreihe, Livkoit, and you say, Anisa, Eva, Etaklam, Shivas, Stefani, Kinor, the Shivaya, Libi, the base hill, the Nehel, Moidia, Melu, Machanayim, the Holy Gate, Reihe, Shamash, Kinish, Kunalak, Yedref, Patak, the Kavishaka, Reihe. Before that, in the bad, how you have in Sarah, Chemet, Kabim, Oi, אפשר לנפשי להשתפך, במקום אשר רוח הלב שפוכה בחירייך, עד בית מלוכה כיסא כבוד אל, ויחש ועבדים עלי כיסאות כבירייך. מנהל בשויטת במקומות אשר נגלו אלוהים לחזייך ולתפירייך, מי יעשה לי כנפיים וארחק נדוד, אני לבשרי לבבי בין בשרייך. אפול אפי עלי ארצך, וארצה בנייך למועד ואחרונים לספרייך. אפי ביומתי עלי כברויתה אבותיי, ואשתוי מהם עלי חברון ממקר כברייך. Harabarim Bahar, Sham Snay, Ibim Gidim, Iraq, Moiraya, Kayin, Shemot Avirate, we murder of Casafarek, no test of Noraya. Yinavlin Apshi Hale Farum, the Yahe, Ale Haboch Mamar, Shahia the Viraya, Bim Kamarone, Hashun Ignaz, Bim Kamkura, Uvaya, Church no Hadwe Hadaraya. Although Ashliff, Fair Nader, Ekop Demon, he live at Earth Bovelas, Nisiraya, Hefira, Please, Help base Kazaki, Kabul, Kalkalo, Mesiraya, O Ism or Yom, Himasuk, Lanai, Baoid, Arabifi, or Bimbe, Big Baby Saraya, Boys, Haigonim, Atar Pima at Tikvar Maluka Salai, Benafshi Mimuraya, Eskara, Ace Eskara, Allah, Esha Hamare, Veskarani, Baba Emtesh, Mariah, See on Kalilas Yofi, Abba, Bahin, Oirilim, Oidubonik, Shunapshat, Kaviraya. Him has me him the Shabbat have I call him out to me my day over him out of a riot me bar to be sure if him the next day from stack of him ishmim primary lena riot. Edre Hamone Hasher Galu in his past to be Haraki League of Blocher Hafuka de Raya Hamahati Gibishu Raya Hamisan Sim Alloys will I put Bisantinate Mariah. Shinner who pastors hey I first begodum him Heblom Yad to the Samaku Raya Elmia Damu Mishikaya Elmina Viaya. Belmi the Biaya, Fishy Raya, Shana Biakalive, Kalil Kamam Lidim, Kosner, the Idam, the Davadonity Raya, Kibel, Moshavala, Hair, Energy, Pavia, Gravi, Shambakataraya, Hashramaka, Via, Vierella, Teraya, Viva, Koala, Raya. The Royce Vitavas, Fishy Raya, Cloud, Simcote, Vishuve, Haley, Cardamus, Nuraya. Okay, the next kinos we're going to say are in the art scroll. There are two kinos that were written about the Holocaust on page 384 and then 386. So we'll see both of them. Thinking about the Holocaust, which is a churban that is still very much felt, understood to some extent by us. There's so many different angles of how to think about the horror and the loss that took place. Europe was a place, Poland, Russia, Lithuania, all of Eastern Europe was a place that had been a just a place where the development of Yiddishkeit, of Torah, it was so alive over there. And yes, there were problems, and yes, it was not the religious Shangri-La that sometimes we're meant to feel, and there were definitely cracks in the foundation of what was going on. But there was a building of Torah. There were Gedolim. There was a level of Torah commitment, of Torah knowledge that was wiped out. Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, famously established by Rav Meir Shapiro, was really, in a sense, the first yeshiva in Poland that the other yeshivas had been established in Slobodka. And Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin only really started in 1930. Chachmei Lublin, we think about it, you had to be Behered on hundreds and hundreds of Daf Gemara Bal Peh. You had to know so many Masechtas, so many pages of Gemara by heart. It was and some of the genius Gedolim, uh, Farnsworth or Hirschsprung, that emerged, few, very few. They had been Talmidim of Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin. But if you think about it, it was a yeshiva that was open for less than a decade. Like, it didn't even last 10 years. Slobodka Yeshiva was a yeshiva that had been opened in 1881, but it had developed and grown, and their and the Rosh Yeshiva of these yeshivas, they were traveling all over the place raising money. Slobodka Yeshiva had a building that they built, and they never moved into it. They never had a chance. There's a little bit of a disagreement about whether or not, like, did anybody ever actually learn in the building that was, supposed to be the yeshiva of Slobodka, um, brand new building, but never able to be used. All of the children, all of the youth, all of the families that, we're anybody who's here and who's offspring of a survivor, so we're the lucky ones. But a very, very, very small percentage of the people, of the families, of the kihilos that existed in that world. And there is a reality, there's a certain type of horror in something that never even had a chance to get started. As a rabbi, one of the invisible and difficult tasks that I had was when someone would have a stillborn. So what happens to the body? Woman gives birth, she goes through labor, something is born, but it's not alive. It needs to be buried. There's no levaya, and there's no anything like that. Somebody has to go to the hospital and get the body, put it into shoebox, something, bring it to basic Varis, and dig a hole and create an unmarked grave and bury it. There's something that is so painful on so many levels. It's one thing to have something that was never even a Havamina. It was never even supposed to happen. And then it's another thing where you have someone who goes through a life and they live and they have opportunities and they die. That's also a tragic. But when something is there, but it never even has a chance to get started, that's that's a churban. The And it's a churban that is nowadays also. We spoke about earlier. When an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, and they're kids, and they're carrying guns, and they get killed. So that's a life. Yeah, you get to live 18 years of your life, but you never had a chance to have a spouse, children, make a mark on this world. There's a specific tragedy and horror in a building that's built for Torah, never used. A yeshiva that's just getting started. Nothing happens with it. In the Haftarah Parshas Bahar, there's Yirmiyahu has a description of Kadosh Baruch Hu telling people there's going to be a churban, but let's make a kinyan. Gemara and Gittin, there are a bunch of things that are learned out of this description about shtaros. Let's make a kinyan and let's purchase something. Purchase something that's never going to be used, and it's a description of this kind of horror, this type of terrible calamity, of something that gets started but never really gets started. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the end of the Nevuah says, Hayipali mimeni dava. Is anything impossible for me? We are able to see only so far. We are able to experience and recognize only so much. And when somebody dies, when somebody gets killed, when there's a stillborn, there's no tomorrow. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Hayipali mimeni davar, there's no tomorrow. But there's a tomorrow after tomorrow. There's something that's beyond that. When things are built and left unrealized, when things are created and never able to go forward, those things aren't dead. Those things are not non-existent. They are things that we need to realize that they actually do come back. And the way they come back, and the way they are used, and the way they fulfill their purpose is ultimately when HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings Geula. In the meanwhile, all we have is the sadness and the longing for that thing to be real, for that thing to have turned into something purposeful. There's a passion with which, there's an aish with which something is destroyed. Aish, but it's with a passion that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asad livnosa. All of these things that existed but didn't really have time to take off, to happen, to become real, to become something. All of those children's lives that were snuffed out, all of those 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who were killed at Kiddush Hashem, all of those places of Torah that never took off in the way that they were supposed to. They're not dead. They're not gone, but they are a hachana. They are a preparation that we live off of and that we have to create the reality in which they are going to be able to see their true fulfillment. When we have that passion, when we have that want, when we have the sense of how important they were, they are, and how we need to live our lives in a purposeful way in which we are going to be able to really and truly carry the torch of what those things were. We may not be on the level of any of the Chachmei Lublin. We may not have any sense of what it means to sit in a building of Slobodka. We may not be able to live the lives of those people, those millions of people and children and young people who were wiped off the face of this planet with not a trace of remnant of them. But they're there and they're here, and that when we live our lives, and when we live it recognizing that we are building and that we are climbing on their backs and on their shoulders, when we recognize that This is who we are, and this is what we're all about. When we create that desire that fuels the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, then all of that comes back to becoming the reality that they were meant to be. They're able to become everything that they were supposed to be. And as we say this memory of the Kedoshim, we should have in mind that we remember that loss and we recognize what it is, and we realize that it's a charge for us to take into the future, to see to it that what was lost never really lost, but that it has the opportunity to be rebuilt. Page 384. זכרו נא וקיינינו כל ישראל, כל חפצי שמע פרמות. אגר מעניין תאמינו במלחמה, במיסוס משנות אכזריאס ברוב ותמה, תשתכו בחלה דרת תתתו דרת ונתמה. סעקו סמו בחייותיהם צפופים וסגורים בקרונים, כצאן לטרף יובלו לשריפה בקפשונים, כל שעבם ייזכר תמיד לפני שכם בעיניהם, וקרם שמע ישראל מסנפשם לעדני הדם. ראשי ישיבות וסמדיהם ואמניהם חשמה, הבידו מעינוייהם, כאשר בהרוגם ביד רמה, דמי ילד דמעקים צעקים מלאכה מן האדמה, נקוים נקמס טעם פנושים כל חיי כל נשמה. עשרי פס אלפי מדרשות ובתי כנסיות רבות דברי תבלם דהד נקויני בשגיאות. שולחו באש מקדשי אל הטיסו ואיננו סופיות, ושלם המעביר ספק רעיותים הגלים מלא גביות. Saku Shemai Vadamala Fearos Mifterate Rupa Bakilo Seha. No Kalemic, I may Mr. Ross, Tatikim Takinim, Tatim Teke Abunato, Yam Golino Miartenu Loyaka Tekil Yonema. Rakemo Chevi Tini Habetnami Shemai, the Makado Takadu Shimpiasa Kiatim Frame. Coin in base Kazashane of the Nakamina Bishop Flying for Vivian Babi. As the Shemas with the Dorvador, Session Hospital Store. They were oid and filter after the Hudson. Due to pay Babel dump from us after example, they pay up a saw you get in the outside that I gave bad they had the problem in Brasa. Ooh, I love Kapai and Maha, Isha my pie, I'll make them well. Hey, those to be the service to the third capture, Mr. Roy, like the dice, something. Meet him, Palgay, my bad name, I am ill, after Snackle, had the mother. I'll lay out, I love him. We have to remark the Serbia Babel and TV. There's a famous rotation for people my right to get on the act. Albonos, but first, this of Bimbis of Voice Files are in Bitap on Trail. I'll do the Gamla Rabbis, River Voice, Navim, Makayim, and my chef, and your brother. Estimum the Rushki, Caesar's very shall call it up, Elim has been. Son after Macy may shave every shade. She shall say, Fabim, I love thee. Shulishia the bear, the big brack down beside the air, because my head came in a half the Goyal down, no, they hair, Sabra, Mountain, Africa, South. The 500 a coast barrage, a coast of you blew the red staff, you already make him to most many him to this character than that. Kill the Guinea, Nihit to be some trade today, that I love him. The far is the far below customer at 8 Nicoin Elbow in Alice. The Machanois have even at the impact in effort as a terrible that they have the Oita Yuma. The Bontima on Chica on and Sabon, Chica National Service Kaya, so the Toy Follow Nicoya Hit Below the Kaya. The Rosa should be determined from the Mathematics Bigidin. The Cadre Hara Al Culture Guide, Mikahalana, Nakim, with the fun group project to be able to project allow diamond at mass nayatin. If a putter for him the purpose for him for our that is project or shape project meaning character no yes you be yourself of have a recipe Ich inu ach yo say no better to be I say no I say it up me they were mastery yes it been sorry with him yamina diplomatic match Marie Setam in Loila dampen hegala hoyari up in the fast katidaka don't get our Timmy if now should be some like this level for now hit the catch the coach my Israel motion nefesh lael to yap say magia macaroin it's dikudim afani and afani manim on the Finish our kia some did humbly covered if that they are still not the noise for the story. Dumbness kay dam has for some simply church sorry if I could some for most name is me my little star Israel are sure the also case is breakfast which I miss have the air command air from somehow you have the El kahimera kema dos kana kema shada kama oidne stefes or kadosh tasmiach karne tasmiach or Elohim mirakas